purchases, it belongs. Freedom becomes real.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Glo's Lessons from the Garden. My name is Gloria Cassell, and before I say anything else, I just want to say I see you. If you've been carrying so much that somewhere along the way you've forgotten what it feels like to truly flourish, I see you. If you spent years taking care of everyone else while quietly putting yourself last, I see you. If you're working one job, two jobs, maybe even three, trying to keep your family afloat, trying to keep your bills paid, trying to make sure everyone else is okay, I see you. If you're become so accustomed to surviving that you've forgotten what peace actually feels like, I see you. And today, I don't want to teach you. I simply want to have a conversation because years ago, I was you. People often ask me, so Gloria, what do you do? And I've recently started answering that question a little differently. I tell them, I discovered that many of us are carrying responsibilities we were never meant to carry. And over time, those burdens quietly steal our ability to flourish. Then I simply say, I understand because I lived that life and I mean it. Not for a season, not for a few months, but for decades. I became a single mother. I also became a homeowner, but I also worked multiple jobs. And for years, my life became one long checklist. I wake up, I go to work, I pick up another shift, I pay bills, take care of everyone, go to sleep, wake up, do it all over again. Rinse, cycle, repeat. Does that sound familiar? Maybe you're living the life right now. Maybe no one around you even realizes how tired you really are because you've become so good at carrying it all. You smile, you show up, you get it done, but inside, you're exhausted. I know that feeling because I lived it. There was a time when my daughter was just a little girl. To make ends meet, I worked a second job every weekend. Every Saturday, 12-hour shifts. Every Sunday, 7-hour shifts. 19 extra hours every single weekend for 10 years. And thankfully, my employer allowed me to bring my daughter with me. And I'm forever grateful for that because although we did spend the weekends together at work, at least we were together. But there was another side to that story. There were birthdays, family gatherings, weekend cookouts, celebrations, moments, even my daughter just being a kid moments that we simply missed because survival required the sacrifice. And looking back now, one sentence keep coming to mind, and that is we were still in moments together. Not because I didn't love being a mother, not because I wanted to work weekends, but because at the time, I believed that's what responsible people did. You carry it, you push through, you don't complain, you just keep going. And maybe that's your story too. Maybe you're listening today and thinking, Gloria, you just described my life. Then let me say it again. I see you because I know what it feels like when responsibility slowly turns into exhaustion. When surviving becomes so normal, you don't even remember what thriving felt like. And here's what I want you to hear before we go any further. This podcast is not about telling you to stop being responsible. It's not about walking away from your family or quitting your job or pretending life isn't hard. That's not what this is about. This is about discovering that there is a better way to faithfully live the responsibilities God has entrusted to you without losing yourself in the process. Because somewhere along the way, I discovered something so simple, yet so profound that it completely changed my life. And strangely enough, I didn't discover it in a classroom. I didn't discover it in a boardroom. I discovered it in a garden. The garden was never the destination. Have you ever looked back over your life and realized that God was preparing you long before you ever recognized it? I have. In fact, that's exactly what happened to me. For years, I thought God was teaching me how to garden. Looking back now, I don't think the garden was ever the destination. I think the garden was God's classroom. Years ago, I became a homeowner. And here's the interesting part. I didn't choose my home. My home was actually a lottery home. And out of everyone who entered, I wasn't even selected first. I was an alternative selection. And eventually, I received a call that this home would become mine. So looking back today, I don't believe that was an accident because out of all the homes available, mine had the largest yard and almost no landscaping, just a barren dirt backyard. And now imagine that. As a brand new homeowner, I couldn't afford to hire a landscaping company if I wanted to. So I had two choices: to accept the dirt and live with it, or learn what I needed to take on this journey myself. So I chose to learn. I started reading and researching, visiting nurseries, and making mistakes along the way. And I would try and try again, digging, planting, watering, pruning, waiting, more waiting. And slowly, something beautiful began to happen. And not just in my backyard, but inside of me. And at the time, I thought I was cultivating the garden, and I had no idea God was cultivating me. Isn't it amazing how sometimes we're so focused on what we're building that we don't realize God is building us? I thought I was learning about plants. God was teaching me about people. I thought I was learning about soil. God was teaching me about the human heart. I thought I was learning about seasons. God was teaching me about life. You see, one thing kept catching my attention. And no matter what plant I was working with, no matter what tree or flower or shrub or seed, everything in creation flourished by following its design, not by rushing, not by competing, not by comparing itself to another plant, not by trying to live in the wrong season. Everything simply followed its design and it flourished. Think about that just for a moment. Have you ever seen a tree trying to bloom in the winter? No. Have you ever seen flowers apologizing because they're not producing fruit in spring? Nope. Have you ever seen the soil frustrated because harvest hasn't arrived yet? No. Creation doesn't fight the season it's in, it responds to it. And because it responds, it flourishes. And that observation stayed with me. Honestly, it wouldn't leave me alone. And the more I observed creation, the more I started asking myself a question. Why does creation flourish while so many people, including me at that time, are exhausted? It's the same creator, the same wisdom, the same world. So why the difference? I couldn't stop asking the question. And then one day, it hit me. Maybe the problem isn't that we've forgotten how to work. Maybe we've forgotten how to live according to God's design. And that thought changed everything because suddenly the garden wasn't just teaching me about flowers anymore. It was revealing something about us, about me, about you, about the life I had been living. Remember what I shared earlier about working multiple jobs, trying to carry everything, believing that what's responsible people do? As soon as I stood in that garden, watching creation, I realized something. The exhaustion I was experiencing wasn't because I was weak or that I lacked discipline or I didn't love my family. It was because somewhere along the way, I had drifted away from the rhythm God designed. So now I want to be very clear about something because life does have responsibilities, real responsibilities. Our family needs us. Our children needs us. Our parents need us. Our jobs need us. And our communities need us. And I'm not suggesting we run away from responsibility. Not at all. I'm saying there is a difference between faithfully carrying what God has entrusted to us and trying to carry life in a way He never designed us to. There is a difference. And I didn't know that difference until the garden quietly began teaching me. And that realization would eventually become the foundation of everything I teach today. But at the time, I still had no idea where God was leading me. I just knew every time I stepped into the garden, something inside of me felt alive. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And every time I had to leave to return to the pace, the pressure, the constant hustle, something inside of me grieved. At the time, I could not explain it. Today, I finally understand it. I want to share with you the moment I realized God hadn't just been teaching me through a garden. He had been preparing my entire life, even my career, even the places I thought had nothing to do with my purpose. And when those pieces finally came together, everything and looking changed. Back, I can finally see it. You know, there was something I couldn't understand for years. And maybe you've experienced this too. Have you ever looked back over your life and wondered, God, why did you have me there? Why that job? Why that relationship? Why that season? Why that struggle? At the time, it made absolutely no sense. But now, looking back, I can finally see it. Because for over 20 years, I worked in communications and public relations. Everything was fast paced, deadlines, media, crisis management, events, projects, pressure. Everything was urgent. Everything needed attention. Everything needed to be done now. And if you ever worked in an environment like that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The pace never stopped. And honestly, neither did I. I just kept moving, carrying more, doing more, trying harder, believing that what's success look like. But something started happening because every morning before work, I would walk outside into my backyard, into the garden. And every single day, I found myself wanting to stay just a little longer. Just one more flower, one more plant, one more project, one more hour. There was something about being there that brought me peace. Then I'll look at the clock and I'll have to stop, go back inside and get dressed for work, and return to the office. And something happened that I couldn't explain. Sometimes I would stand at my back patio sliding door, looking back into the garden, and I would cry, literally cry, real tears. Not because I hated my job, not because I didn't appreciate having my career. I simply couldn't understand why it hurt so much to leave the garden. And at the time, I thought I was just emotional. But today, I think something much deeper was happening. And years later, God would reveal something to me. That wasn't just a garden. It had become the place where my soul felt most aligned. I didn't have language for it then, but looking back, I realized every morning I was stepping into the very environment where God had been teaching me all along. And every time I walked away, something inside of me grieved. Not because work was bad, but because I was leaving the classroom where God was shaping me. Then something happened that changed my career forever. My communications environment became so difficult to bear. The pressure, the culture, the environment. It had reached a point where, for the first time, I wanted to leave. Now, at the time, I thought I was simply changing jobs to a different department. And looking back, I don't think that's what God was doing at all. I think God was changing classrooms. So I transferred, and I transferred to the parks department. And here's what's amazing about that. I didn't realize it then, but I realize it now. Because in the parks department, you can't ignore creation. And everything we do follows creation's rhythm. In the wintertime, we are preparing for snow. In the springtime, we're preparing for new growth. In the summer months, we are tending and maintaining. And in the fall, we are harvesting and saving seed, preparing for another cycle. The calendar doesn't tell us what to do, creation does. And suddenly, without even realizing it, my career had become aligned with everything God had already been teaching me in my backyard. So looking back, I smiled because I finally see what I couldn't see then. God wasn't just changing my job. He was aligning my life. And communications taught me what hustle feels like. But the garden taught me what peace feels like. And the parks department taught me what living according to creation's rhythm looks like. So none of it was wasted. Every season, every job, every challenge, every transition was all preparation. And then a few weeks ago, I had a realization that literally brought me to tears. For years, I kept praying, God, when you're ready, send me. I believed I was waiting on God. But one morning, as I looked back over my life, something became so clear. I wasn't waiting on him. He had been preparing me since the very beginning. He had already positioned me. He had already trained me. He had already walked me through decades of experiences. The only thing missing was my ability to finally see it. In that moment, I saw it and everything changed. And maybe that's why you're listening today. Maybe you're in a season that doesn't make sense. Maybe you're wondering why you've had to walk the road you walked. Maybe you're asking God, what was all of that for? Can I encourage you? Don't rush to dismiss the chapters you yet understand. Because one day you may discover they weren't interruptions, they were preparations. And I want to share with you the moment everything came together. How a lifetime of experiences, a backyard, a parks department, scripture, and creation became what is now known as We Are Gardens. And why I believe you were created not just to survive, but to flourish. You know, for a long time, I kept praying the same prayer. God, when you're ready, use me. Maybe you prayed something similar. Lord, open the door. Lord, show me my purpose. Lord, tell me what you want me to do. I prayed those prayers for many years, and I sincerely believed I was waiting on God. But one morning, as I sat reflecting over my life, something happened that completely changed the way I saw everything. I wasn't studying, I wasn't writing, I wasn't preparing a speech for my YouTube videos. I was simply remembering piece by piece, season by season, and God began bringing my life back to me. The communications department, the stress, the pressure, the backyard, the years I spent cultivating, the gardening business, speaking about how to garden, the parks department, working multiple jobs, and finally receiving rest Christ promised, leaving my second job. Every single piece just started connecting, almost like someone had been putting together a puzzle that I never seen before. And suddenly I realized something. I wasn't waiting on God. God had been preparing me all along. He wasn't asking me to become someone else. He had been shaping me one season at a time. And with every hardship, every responsibility, every transition, with every lesson, every tear I shed, nothing had been wasted. Absolutely nothing. And that's when I understood why creation had become so important to me. It wasn't because I loved garden. It wasn't because I loved flowers. It was because creation had quietly become the language God used to prepare me for my assignment. Now, can I ask you a question? What if God has been doing the same thing in your life? What if the season you're in right now isn't random at all? What if the job you're frustrated with has been preparing you? What if the heartbreak prepared you to comfort someone else? What if raising those children of yours prepared you for leadership? What if caring for your aging parent taught you compassion you'll need one day? What if the business you're building is shaping you even more than you're shaping it? What if none of it has been wasted? You see, for years, I thought flourishing meant everything in my life becoming easier. But today, I see flourishing very differently. Flourishing isn't the absence of responsibility. Flourishing isn't a perfect schedule. Flourishing isn't having no problems. Flourishing is living in alignment with the way God designed you to live. That's what I saw in creation. And eventually, that's what I began experiencing myself. Because there are still responsibilities and there are still challenges in my life. There are still seasons, but something changed. I stopped believing that everything depended on me. And I started trusting that God's design was better than my striving. And that's why when people ask me what I do, I don't start by talking about an assessment on an app or a community. I simply tell them, I've discovered that many of us are carrying responsibilities we were never meant to carry. And over time, those burdens quietly steal our ability to flourish. And then I tell them, I understand because I live that life. And if today's conversation has spoken to you, I want to invite you not into a membership, not into a program, but into a journey of discovering where you learning are, from the season you're in, and allowing God to teach you just as He taught me and many believers before me. Because I truly believe you were created not just to survive, you were created to flourish just as creation does. So before we end today, I want to leave you with one thought. The next time you walk outside, just take a moment and look at creation. Look at the trees, the flowers, the grass, the birds, the soil. Notice something. None of them are trying to become something they weren't created to be. They simply respond to the season they're in. Maybe that's where your journey begins too. I thank you for spending this time with me today. My prayer is that you leave this conversation knowing one thing, that you're not alone. I see you. I understand because I live something similar. Until next time, keep tending to you because you were made to flourish. Thank you for listening to Glo's Lessons from the Garden. If today's conversation resonated with you, I invite you to take the 4 Seasons assessment and discover the season you are in right now. Wherever you are on your journey, remember this. Every season has a purpose and every season has the potential for growth. Until next time, keep tending to you. You can find the free assessment on my website, and that's at Gloria D. Cassell, CASSELL.com. I'll put a link of my website in the description of this podcast. Thank you again. And we will close out with a song from my Freedom album that you can find on right here on Spotify. Just search my name again, Gloria D. Cassell, CASSELL, and you should find my Freedom album. Until next episode, again, tend to you and keep tending to you. Take care.
Provider, protector, source and shield. Jesus said, seek first and heal. The weight lifted when I be else was added, just like you said. And everything else was added, just like you said.